Heart structure. The heart is obviously a vital organ situated in the chest cavity, slightly to the left. We'll start by looking at the external structure of the heart. Here you can see that the heart is enclosed in what we call the pericardium, which in this diagram has been cut away. That gives an element of protection to the heart. The key features on the external side of the heart really relate to these, which are the coronary blood vessels. These are the blood vessels which supply the cardiac muscle with blood and consequently with oxygen and glucose, so that they are able to continue to respire. A blockage in one of these arteries is what leads to coronary heart disease and can ultimately lead to myocardial infarction or heart attack. Other features that you can see from the external surface of the heart, you can see you have the atria at the top leading down into the ventricles below, and you have the blood vessels entering and leaving the heart. Cutting away to the inside of the heart, we have the familiar picture of the internal structure of the heart with the 1, 2, 3, 4 chambers, and the clear double circulatory system with the right side here and the left side here, separated in the middle by the septum. Going through the key points, we have the blood vessel which delivers blood from the body to the heart here, which is the vena cava. This is the superior vena cava and this is the inferior vena cava. This here is your right atrium and here is your right ventricle, separated by the atrioventricular valve. Now there is an atrioventricular valve on the right side and on the left side. The one on the right side is the tricuspid valve and the one on the left side is the bicuspid valve. You can think that you need to remember to try before you buy. A good life lesson. Moving on from there, we have the right ventricle labelled as number 2, and the blood will obviously flow from the vena cava into the right atrium. When the pressure builds up sufficiently in here, this valve will open. The blood will then flow into the right ventricle. This valve will then close. The contraction will start from the base of the heart up, and it will then flow into the pulmonary artery. Now the pulmonary artery is unique because it carries deoxygenated blood. It is the only artery to carry deoxygenated blood. This artery branches. One half goes to the right lung, the other half to the left lung, and the blood will then return to the heart along the pulmonary veins, one comes from the left lung and comes from the right lung. That feeds into the left atrium through the tricuspid valve and into the left ventricle. You'll notice that the wall of the left ventricle is markedly thicker than the wall of the right ventricle. This is due to the increased pressure required to pump the blood from the left ventricle all the way around the body, whereas here the blood only needs to go to the lungs. The blood is pumped through the semilunar valve and then into the aorta, from where it goes to the rest of the body. The blood vessels themselves have significant structural adaptations. So if we look at a diagram here of the artery, the vein and the capillaries, you can see that the artery has the smallest lumen, the lumen being the hole, with a very thick wall. So you have the much thicker wall in the artery because it has to withstand a much greater pressure, whereas the vein can cope with a much thinner wall because the blood is at low pressure. An additional structural feature found in veins are the valves, which help to prevent backflow. Now the capillaries are single-celled to allow for easy diffusion, and they're obviously much narrower around about the diameter of a red blood cell. One of the other things that you need to be able to do is recognise arteries and veins, and to some extent capillaries, from electron micrograph pictures. This is a good one to illustrate the difference in the thickness of the walls, which is one of your key sort of distinguishing factors. The artery wall is always markedly thicker than the vein, and consequently the artery tends to have a much more spherical shape. So if we put that picture to one side and have a look at this one, you can see here that we have a much thicker wall here and a very obviously spherical shape, which makes this one here the artery and this one here the vein. Identifying capillaries is really challenging on these things, and what you're looking for is something with a very, very thin wall. So if you look down here, you can see that these lumps would represent the nuclei of the epithelial cells which actually make up the capillary wall, and then in there you would potentially have some blood cells. So you can see it's a much, much thinner scenario than here, where you have the artery wall which is very thick, or the vein which is just so much bigger. And again here you've got the artery, nice thick spherical in shape, and the vein or venule, which is sort of much more irregular in shape and has a much thinner wall.